The knife went in once, then twice, then the body stopped moving. Elena pressed her back against the cold concrete wall of the alley, hand clamped over her mouth, heart slamming so hard she was certain it would give her away. She had only come outside for air. She had only needed 5 minutes away from the noise of the city. But now a man was dead on the ground in front of her, and the man holding the bloodied knife was already turning around. Before we go any further, if you've never seen one of these stories before, you are not ready for what's coming. Hit that like button right now, subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on your notifications, because this story is going to wreck you emotionally, and I need you here for every single part of it. Now, let's go back to Seoul. Elena Diallo had not planned to fall in love with Seoul. She had come for the research fellowship, for the university stipend, for the line it would add to her CV. She had packed 2 suitcases, told her mother she would be back in 18 months, and landed at Incheon on a Tuesday morning in October when the city was just beginning to exhale the last warmth of autumn. She was 26. She was brilliant. She was completely, utterly unprepared. Seoul swallowed her whole, not unkindly, but completely. The city did not apologize for itself. It moved fast, it lit up early, it stayed awake long after she wanted to sleep. She lived in a small apartment in Mapo, a 10-minute walk from the university, a 15-minute subway ride from anywhere that mattered. She ate alone at the Pojangmaka stalls near the river and learned to order in Korean with an accent that made the halmyeoni, who ran the nearest stall, laugh affectionately every single time. She was not unhappy. She was just suspended, floating between 2 worlds, belonging fully to neither. Her research was on urban displacement patterns, how cities swallow communities whole and leave behind only the architecture. She spent her days in archives and her evenings in the field, walking neighborhoods with her recorder, her camera, her notebook. She was meticulous. She was focused. She kept her head down. That was, until the night of November 14th. She had been working late at the library, and the particular kind of fluorescent-lit exhaustion that only archives produce had driven her outside at 11:15 for air, for cold, for anything that wasn't recycled breath and dusty paper. She had wandered without thinking, a habit Seoul had given her, the strange trust the city inspired in her legs even when her mind was elsewhere. She turned into the alley behind Mapo Station almost without noticing she had done it. And she stopped. 2 men, one standing, one already crumpling. The standing man moved with a precision that was almost clinical. One thrust, a step back, a second thrust, and then stillness. Not the stillness of shock. The stillness of someone who has done this before and feels nothing about it. The dying man made a sound that Elena would hear in her sleep for months afterward. It was not dramatic. It was small, almost confused. And then the alley was silent. Elena's back found the wall behind her. Her hand found her mouth. Her lungs found nothing. She had forgotten entirely how to breathe. She told herself, do not move. Do not make a sound. Do not exist. The man with the knife crouched over the body. He reached into the dead man's jacket and removed something. An envelope. A phone. She couldn't tell. He straightened. He looked at his hands with the same blank efficiency someone might look at a grocery list. Then he turned. And he saw her. Not almost. Not maybe. He saw her, fully, directly, with dark eyes that took her in the way a camera lens takes in a scene. Flat. Recording. Absolute. Elena did not run. Her legs had stopped being her legs. The man did not run either. He looked at her for a long moment. And in that moment Elena understood 2 things simultaneously. This man was not afraid of witnesses, and she was entirely, catastrophically alone. She had been seen. His name, she would learn later, was Kim Seojin. But she did not know that yet. In the alley, he was just a silhouette in a black coat with blood on his right hand and nothing readable in his eyes. He tilted his head, barely, just a degree, and that small movement was somehow the most frightening thing she had ever seen. There was no urgency in him, no panic, just assessment. He said something in Korean, low, unhurried. She did not understand the words, but she understood the instruction. Don't move. Her legs obeyed before her brain could argue. 2 men materialized from the shadows at the far end of the alley. She hadn't even known they were there, and in 20 seconds it was over. She was guided, firmly but without violence, into the back of a black vehicle she had also not noticed, and the city kept moving around them as though nothing had happened, because in this city, at this hour, in this neighborhood, nothing had. Inside the vehicle, she sat between two men who stared forward and said nothing. The city streaked past the tinted windows, lights, signs, the familiar crawl of traffic, and Elena ran calculations in her mind with the cold efficiency of someone who has realized that panic is a luxury she cannot afford right now. They haven't hurt me yet. That means something. He had the chance to make this simple, and he didn't. That means something too. I need to understand what it means before I make any kind of move. She breathed. She counted. She kept her hands in her lap and her face arranged into something she hoped read as composure. The vehicle stopped at a building in a neighborhood she didn't recognize. Clean lines, no sign, underground parking. She was escorted inside and up an elevator and into a room that was not. She noted with a kind of dissociated surprise, a basement. It was an office. A real one. Glass and dark wood, and the quiet hum of filtered air and city noise pressed thin by triple-glazed windows. Books on the shelves. A sofa. A bar cart. Kim Seojin was already there when she arrived. He had changed his shirt. His hands were clean. He stood by the window with a glass of water, not liquor, just water, and regarded her with the same flat attention he had given her in the alley. Like she was a problem, not an emergency, just a problem. He said, in English that was precise and without warmth, "Sit down." She sat, not because she was afraid. She was afraid, deeply, in the marrow of her bones, but because sitting felt like the only place she had right now. "You are a researcher," he said. It was not a question. At Yonsei, Elena Diallo, Nigerian, arrived in Seoul in October. He looked at his phone, then at her. "You have no criminal record, no political affiliations, no connections to anyone relevant." She said nothing. "You were in the wrong place," he said. "That is all." "Then let me go," she said, and her voice only shook slightly, which she considered a victory. He looked at her for a long time. Something moved behind his eyes, not emotion exactly, but the consideration of emotion, the way a chess player considers a move they hadn't anticipated. She watched him make a decision and then unmake it, and then make a different one. "No," he said. That was the whole answer. Just no? And in that single syllable, Elena's world compressed down to a single urgent question that would define every moment of the months ahead. Why? Why wasn't she already dead? What did he want? What was she to him? She was not a hostage. No ransom demand ever came. She was not a prisoner. She was given a room, a bathroom, meals, her own phone back with certain calls blocked. She was not free. She could not leave, could not contact anyone outside, could not walk out the door. She was something else entirely, something without a name. And the man who had put her here seemed almost as unsettled by her presence as she was. The apartment they gave her was on the building's 8th floor, separated from Seojin's own floor by 2 levels and a security keypad she didn't have the code to. It had a window. It had clean linens and a working kitchen and books she hadn't asked for, a Korean English dictionary, a novel she had already read, a field guide to urban architecture in Seoul. She did not know whether that last one was a coincidence. She did not believe in coincidences anymore. Days passed. 3, then 5, then 8. She established a routine because routine was armor. She woke at 7. She ate. She read. She thought. She made notes in the margins of the architecture guide with a pen she had found in the desk drawer, treating it like a field notebook, recording everything. The guard rotation, the sounds from the floors below, the patterns of light through the window, the way the building breathed at night. She was not going to go quietly, but she was also, she realized with some consternation, not being harmed. She was being stored, kept, like something valuable whose purpose hadn't yet been determined. Seojin came to see her on the 9th day. He knocked. She found this so surprising that she almost didn't answer. He came in without waiting, but he had knocked, and she turned that fact over in her mind like a coin. He stood in the center of the room and looked at her as though he was checking something off a list. "You haven't tried to escape," he said. "I noticed the locks," she said. "There are people who panic." "I'm not panicking." He studied her. "No," he said. "You're not." Something shifted in his expression, not warmly, not even noticeably, just a fraction of recalibration. Like he had expected one thing and found another. "You want something from me," she said. It was not a question. She had been building toward it for 9 days. I want you to remain unproblematic, he said. Then let me go? I didn't see anything that would hold up in court. I don't know who you are. I have no reason to. You saw me, he said. Flat. Final. That is enough. Then why am I still alive? He was quiet for long enough that she began to think he wasn't going to answer. Then, I don't know yet. He left before she could respond to that. She sat down on the bed and stared at the door for a long time. He doesn't know. That was either the most terrifying thing he could have said or the most honest. She couldn't decide which. She wasn't sure it mattered. What mattered was this. A man who had killed someone in cold blood in an alley and felt nothing about it was standing in her room 9 days later, and the only explanation he could offer for her continued existence was I don't know yet. She began to pay closer attention to him. She noticed, in the days that followed, he came back, not often, but with a consistency that felt deliberate, that he was not what she had initially assembled from the data. She had built him as cold, functional, empty, a machine that wore a coat. But machines did not knock. Machines did not pause before speaking. Machines did not stand at the window and look out at the city with an expression that was almost something like tiredness. She did not trust what she was noticing. She cataloged it anyway. He read. He was meticulous about it. Books with paper markers, not folded corners. He drank water, almost never alcohol, though she'd seen the bar card in his office. He spoke to his people in Korean, but occasionally, in moments he seemed unaware of, he let English slip in, not fluent, but careful, chosen. He never raised his voice. She could not figure out if that was control or simply the absence of the need to raise it. On the 14th day, he found her at the window, watching the city, and he stood beside her. Not close, not personal, just parallel. And for almost 10 minutes, neither of them said anything. Just two people watching Seoul move. When he left, she stood in the same spot for another half hour, and she was honest with herself about one thing. She was afraid of him, yes. She would always be afraid of him, but he had become, in some horrible and inconvenient way, real to her. No longer just the figure in the alley. A person. She didn't know what to do with that. His name was Kim Seo-jin, but the streets called him something else. She heard it from one of the junior men who sometimes left the stairwell door open. Guy 1. The Count. She looked it up in the dictionary later and decided the nickname made an uncomfortable amount of sense. He ran a network that stretched through 3 districts and touched everything from real estate to supply chains to the specific category of businesses that didn't have signage. He was not the oldest power in Seoul's underworld. He was, by many accounts, the most precise. But precision had enemies. She learned this in the middle of week 3, at 2 in the morning, when she was woken by the sound of the building changing. Not alarms, nothing so obvious, just the texture of footsteps switching from routine to urgent, the way weather changes before you can see the clouds. She sat up. She listened. Raised voices downstairs, Korean too fast and tense for her to follow. Then, for 20 minutes, silence of the specific kind that is not calm but held breath. In the morning, 2 of the regular guards were gone and 3 new faces had appeared. Seo-jin did not come that day or the next. On the 3rd day he arrived, and he was different. Not visibly. Not in any way someone who didn't watch him carefully would have caught. But she watched him carefully now. His left hand, she noticed, was bandaged under his sleeve. She said nothing about it. He said, not sitting down, standing in the center of the room in a way that made the room feel smaller. There is a complication. Is it about me? She asked. Adjacent to you. She waited. A rival organization has become aware that I am holding something, someone, unusual. This creates interest. The kind of interest I would prefer not to exist. So let me go, she said. Again. Still. If I let you go, he said. And something in his voice had changed. It was still flat, still measured, but there was something underneath it now, something that had not been there 3 weeks ago. You walk out of this building, and you are immediately of interest to people who are less restrained in their methods. She stared at him. You're saying you're protecting me. I'm saying your existence has become complicated in ways that are no longer solely my creation. That is the same thing, she said. You're just not willing to say it plainly. He looked at her, and the silence stretched long enough to become its own kind of answer. He was protecting her, not from kindness. She was still not ready to extend him that, but from something. Some calculus she couldn't fully read yet. And the fact that she couldn't fully read it was almost more unsettling than a simple answer would have been. That night, lying in the dark, she made herself confront the thing she had been carefully not confronting. She had been here for 22 days, and she had not been harmed. She had been given books and food, and, once, a plant on the windowsill that she had not asked for and that someone had watered while she slept. She had been told, twice now, things that could be read as honesty. And the man who had done all of these things had also killed someone in an alley without blinking. Both of those things were true simultaneously. She was going to have to live with that. But there was a third truth, the one she had been keeping at the very back of her mind like a coal she was afraid to touch. The world outside this building was not safer than the world inside it. And the man who stood between her and that outside world was complicated. She did not sleep for a long time. It was the plant that started it. Not dramatically, not all at once. Just, the plant was there one morning, a small jade succulent in a terracotta pot on the windowsill, and she stared at it for 10 minutes and felt something crack open in her chest that she did not know had been sealed. She didn't ask about it. She watered it. 2 days later, Seojin came in the evening, which was unusual. The evenings were generally hers, and he sat, for the first time, in the chair near the window instead of standing. He had documents in his hand that he set on the table and then did not look at. "You studied architecture," he said. "Urban studies," she said. "Close. Displacement. How communities lose their homes to development." He was quiet for a moment. "Then, my grandfather's neighborhood was demolished in the 80s. For a highway. He stopped. A pause so small you could miss it. He never recovered from it." She looked at him. He was not looking at her. He was looking at the window. The city. She thought, "You just told me something true. Something that cost something. Not much, a sentence, a half sentence, but something," she said, "because honesty was the only currency that felt worth spending. The research I'm doing here is about exactly that. About what it costs when a place is erased." He looked at her then, and she saw it. Just briefly, just a flash, like catching light on water. Something that was not the Count, not the cold man in the alley, not the unflinching calculation she had been cataloging for weeks. Something that was just a person, holding a wound they'd carried for a long time. She did not reach for it. She was not naive. She had not forgotten the alley, the knife, the body. She did not forget those things for a single day. But she also did not look away. He left shortly after, and neither of them said anything significant when he went. But the next morning, there was a second chair at the window. And the morning after that, he came with coffee. 2 cups, and set one on the table near her, and sat in his chair, and opened his documents without comment. She picked up the coffee. They did not speak for 45 minutes. It was the most honest interaction she had had in Seoul since she arrived. She was terrified by this. She was honest with herself about that too. The attack came from inside. She didn't know this at first. She only knew the sound, sudden, explosive, the building's calm obliterated in a single moment at 3 in the morning. Boots on stairs. Shouting. Something that might have been a door failing. Her own door flew open, and one of Seojin's men, the one she'd privately named Quiet, because he never spoke, pulled her by the arm with a grip that was firm but not cruel, and moved her through the back stairs at a pace that did not allow questions. In the stairwell, she had 3 seconds to process what she was seeing. Seojin, 2 floors below, in the middle of something that was not a conversation. 2 men down on the floor. A third one, someone she recognized from the building's inner circle, someone who had been here for months, pressed against the wall, and the expression on his face was not fear, but the particular shame of someone who has been caught at something they cannot explain away. Seojin said something in Korean, low and final. The man closed his eyes. Then Seojin looked up and found Elena's face in the stairwell, and something happened in his expression that she had not seen from him before. Not calculation, not assessment, not even protectiveness. Something rawer and faster than any of those. Something like relief. It lasted less than a second. Then it was gone. But she had seen it. She filed it carefully, in the part of her mind where she kept the things that mattered. An hour later, in a different room in a different part of the building she had never been shown before, she sat across from him, and they both drank water and said nothing for a long time. "Someone told them where you were," he said finally. "I gathered." He thought. He stopped. He thought removing you would simplify a political problem within my organization. People who are uncomfortable with how I've handled this. How I've handled you. She understood him to mean. So to them, I'm a liability. Yes. And to you? He looked at her for a long time. You are not a liability, he said, and the way he said it was not warm, not soft, not any of the things a person says when they are being kind. It was something more precise than kindness. It was a statement of position, a line drawn. She should not have felt anything about that. She felt something about that. They came for her 10 days later, in daylight, which was brazen enough to be insulting. 3 vehicles, coordinated. A power move from the rival organization, not a kidnapping, exactly, but a demonstration. We can take what you have. She was moved from the building in the chaos, not by Seoul's people but against them. And for 40 minutes, she was somewhere else entirely, in a room with men who were not careful with her in the way she had grown accustomed to. And she understood, with terrible clarity, the difference between a man who kept her out of calculation and men who saw her as nothing more than a message. She was not harmed. She was not going to be harmed yet. That was the point. She was the message, not the consequence. But when the door came off its hinges and Seoul stood in the frame, he was not the count. He was not the man from the alley, precise and empty. He was something she had not yet seen from him, undone, not visibly. His face was still arranged, still controlled. But his eyes were not controlled. He crossed the room, and the men who moved to stop him made one attempt each, and then stopped. And he stood in front of her and looked at her. Just looked, the way you look at something you thought you had lost. And then he said her name for the first time. Elena. Not are you injured. Not we need to move. Just her name. In his mouth it sounded like something he'd been holding for a long time. She stood up. She was shaking, and she was not going to pretend otherwise, and she looked at him. At this man who was a murderer and a crime lord, and the most confusing and terrifying and real person she had encountered in Seoul. And she said, "You came." "Of course I came," he said, and there was something rough in his voice, something that had not been there before, something that sounded almost like the thing you feel when you realize what you have almost lost. She did not cry. She was not going to cry in front of him. She cried a little. He did not comment on this. He produced, from somewhere, a jacket, and put it around her shoulders with a carefulness that was almost painful, and said, "We have to move." They moved. That night, after everything, she sat in the room with the window and the plant and the second chair, and she thought about choices. Not her choice, that felt too large, too unresolved, too tangled in things she couldn't name, but just choices, the small ones and the large ones. The ones that look like accidents until you trace them back and find, underneath, the shape of something deliberate. She had come to Seoul for a research fellowship. She had gone outside for air. She had walked into an alley. Every single thing that followed had been a choice made by someone. Him, her, the men around them, the city itself with its indifferent, beautiful chaos. And now she was here, in this room, alive, with a man 2 floors above her who had said her name like it meant something. And she did not know what came next. She did not know what she wanted to come next. She did know this. The next morning, he came with coffee again. 2 cups, as he always did now. He set hers on the table and sat in his chair and looked out at the city. And she picked up her cup and she did not tell him to stop coming. And he did not tell her what he was thinking. And the city outside moved and breathed and held all of its ordinary, terrible, beautiful life. And between them, in the silence, there was something that had no name yet. Something that was either the beginning of something or the beginning of an ending, and she genuinely could not tell which. Maybe that was the point. Do you think Elena should trust him? Or is the connection she feels just survival talking? Drop your thoughts below. And if you felt even one moment of this story, you know what to do. Like, share, subscribe. This story is far from over.